Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the latest episode of SchmoeTalks. That is right, we are back for another week, and I am in a very, very different looking location. This is called Working on Vacation, but it doesn't matter when the work is fun. My name is Aaron Knoll. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of SchmoeTalks, and after last week's very fun interview with recent Schmoedown debutant Amaru Moses, we are back once again with our flashback series discussing season 5. Now, we finished up seasons 1, 2, 3, and 4. We are at literally the halfway point of the show, and we are going into season 5, which, as you guys see in the title, is a bit of a change of the tide. We start to see some of the people who would dominate the next few seasons really take that step up or make their debut, and the kind of old guard start to step away a little bit. But before we get into the specifics of that, I have a crew with me that I need to intro. First up, making his return to SchmoeTalks, he is a TMG regular, especially if you watch After Dark or Cancel This Show, our political show with Matt Beer and Dr. Spaceman Alan Shepard. Alan, how's it going, man? Welcome back.
Thanks for having me, brother. I'm doing good. Excited to be here. Anytime we're talking schmoes, you know I'm gonna be on board to do it. And thanks for plugging to Cancel This Show. We ain't been canceled yet. Woo!
I told him that once I saw the name of it on the channel and I was doing behind the scenes stuff. I saw you finally named the show and I was like, fucking brilliant. Fucking brilliant. I love it. I'm going to interrupt you to the back for just a minute. And then joining me this week, I'm very excited. We have two people making their debut on this show, which excites me. The first, he's done some other stuff with us on TMG, made appearances over the last few weeks. He's made some appearances, I believe his first one recently at least, on Kevin's Picture-in-Picture Trivia. Mr. Jacob Barber joins me from Nerd Entertainment Network, if I have that correct.
Yes, that is correct.
Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Excited to talk season 5. This is when I really started watching the Schmoedown. Like I saw the end of season 4 and kind of marathoned it, and then season 5 is when I okay, I like this. So I'm excited to talk.
Absolutely excited to have you here. I'll drop you to the back for just 1 second. And then finally, our third guest joining us tonight, he has been a little bit around the fan leagues of the Schmoedown, playing here or there, but in terms of other podcast-type shows, if I'm correct, this is the first one he's ever been a part of, which is exactly the type of thing I want to bring to this show and giving people that opportunity to speak about things they enjoy. I'm joined by Mr. Andy Sweet. How's it going, man?
What's going on? Thanks for having me on. Stoked to talk Schmoedown with people. I don't get a lot of people to talk Schmoedown with, so I'm excited to talk about this. Season 5, it's an interesting season, so I'm ready to get into it.
Absolutely, absolutely. As I bring our other panelists back in now, guys, beware. Season 5 will be split into 3 parts, so these gentlemen will be joining me for the first third, and over the next couple of weeks there will be 2 more videos with some different interchangeable panelists talking about the other parts. But today we start with the kind of beginning and really the build-up of season 5. Season 5 was, I think overall, we could say a little bit of a slow start. Not a bad start per se. There's definitely some entertainment factor in there, but it was kind of the next big expansion in terms of bringing people in and giving them a chance to get a go and seeing what they could do. But before we did that, we started off the season with a bang with 2 number 1 contenders matches. We opened the season, and I just have to say, small details, but this logo, and there's not a great picture of it in any of these, might be my favorite version of the logo with the changing colors and all that. That's a little detail that I love. But we have JTE, Rachel Cushing, and Mike Kalinowski with the... Seriously, I'm developing a knack for pulling just the worst looking faces for these guys. I don't make them look good at all.
You picked a good spot
for that triple threat number 1 contenders match. And then the follow-up match to that in the opening week of the season was Top 10 taking on Top That in what was one of the first, especially in a season where we saw the strategy side develop so much more. I'd say that's probably one of the first big blunders we've ever seen in terms of strategy, and it really hurting a team. So out of these 2 matches, I'll go ahead and start with you, Andy. What is your kind of highlight between these 2 matches?
I mean, it's got to be that Top 10 versus Top That, like we were just talking about. I mean, that was one I just watched today, and that blunder, it really shows you need to study your opponent because they gave them biopics. I just don't know how you give a guy who's never missed a biopic question and then you just gave him the match. I mean, yeah, they recovered on their spin, but that's just we'd never seen anything like that before, apart from a few things here and there. But that was really that kind of showed the game had changed. It wasn't just about what you know. You had to study your opponents. You had to study your movies. Otherwise, you were gonna be left at the back of the bus.
Yeah, absolutely. And the match ended up being one of the best scoring matches of all time. 35-30 it took for top 10 to win. So it really shows you that if top that had dominated in terms of the strategy, they would have knocked the socks off out of top 10, but instead they gave them that way back into it. Alan, I go to you next. Which between these two interests you the most?
I think the top 10, always been a Roca fan, and the top 10 was always a good team for me. And I think, yes, noticing that you got to know your opponents. You got to watch previous matches. You just have to. There's no other way around it. We do that in the fan leagues. I know I do. If I know I'm going up against somebody, I'm going to find out whatever league they're in. If they've had previous matches, I got to watch it to make sure I know what's going on, so I don't give them one of their strengths if the opponent's choice thing conjures up. With the Kalinowski and the JTE always a surprise every time you see him, because he's either going to be really, really on, or he's not going to know a damn thing, and he's not going to pronounce anything correctly. So that's good. So it's always fun. But I always loved the kind of Cushing versus Kalinowski. I always loved their rivalry, which turned into a deep, deep respect, and I just think it was always fun to watch them no matter what. If it was a singles, if it was Intergeekdom, whatever it was always cool to watch them go at each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Jacob, what are your thoughts on these two matches?
Yeah, I'd kind of piggyback off that with the Cushing-Kalinowski. They're probably my favorite rivalry in all of the Schmoedown. Just the matches between them, the respect shown between them. Like, I don't think a person breaks character more than Kalinowski does on screen.
Yep.
And that's something I don't mind. We all know that that's not how they really are. But so yeah, that's, and then the blunder in top 10 versus top that, I have to agree with that. It's just, even though that I was still like new to watching the Schmoedown, even I knew, like, you don't give John Roca biopics. And so it's one of those where you're like just scratching your head, like, why? So I just piggybacking off what they said. I mean, I don't think there's anything more that can be said. It's just,
yeah. And I mean, the only thing, just because I have some of the stats in front of me, is that three-way. Cushing wins by TKO by a score of 20 for her, 14 for JTE. But something that gets overlooked, going through these things, it's funny to talk about the best performances of all time, which would be the top 10, top that match. Mike Kalinowski in a three-way puts up 4 points, which is one of single-handedly the worst performances that's ever been given in a match, ever. And as we'll see over the course of this video, because he played more than one match in this period of time, this was really the beginning and build-up to that little thing that's on Andy's shirt there. We won't quite get to, but it's coming, and everybody knows it's coming. And this was kind of the first step of, like, I mean, not to diss the guy, but come on, look at that face. That's a face. The cleanest joke I can make about the face without disrespecting people. But I mean, yeah, it's unfortunate, because we've seen, obviously, to get to a number one contenders match, he put in some good performances to get there, and it's just so interesting when you do see people that can play well kind of just hit hard like that. It's really weird. But I think you guys are absolutely right, and so with that, we'll go ahead and move on to the next set of matches. And so, before we get to the title matches that resulted of these number one contenders match, we had those kind of period of matches that were kind of played and getting people into the league, getting people some more matches you don't play as much. And I pulled some of the best of those, or most important of those, that I think were in that group. So we have Lon Harris versus Cody Hall, which is a match for the ages. That first perfect round from Cody Hall gave everybody hope, and then it went the way you thought it We had an Intergeekdom 5-way happen between, which was the debut for Coy Jandreau. I believe it was the debut for Adam Hlavik, the debut for Mark Donica, and then we also had Mike Carlson and Keaton Marquis in that match as well. We had Mark Ellis versus Jeff Snyder, which would go on to be Ellis's final match in the Schmoedown ever, just very recent after his buddy in crime, Karloff, retired. And we also have World's Finest versus Kingsman, which is the debut of two men who are just recently went up to battle together for the first time in a long time, Eric Zipper and Winston Marshall. Playing their first match. And another match that I remember, it was after I put this all together, but I know she's a fan favorite, but I forgot to include the clip out, is Janine the Machine also played her first match within this period against Bonnie Somerville. So I'll go ahead and start with Alan. What of these matches mentioned, or if you remember any others in that period, kind of interest you the most?
Well, the weird, and it started with the spectacular, the kind of behind the scenes thing of season 4, with this Lon and Cody thing that they kept going all, a rivalry. I don't know if what was going to happen, but it was a weird thing between those two, and I had no idea what we were trying to do with it and why it was happening, but it was interesting and cute and clever, and I always loved. Cody when he was with the with Bakugo with the fantasy updates was always fun, but I didn't really think much of him as a player, He
gave a solid performance. The match ended 16-15 in sudden death, and obviously we know he got the first round in that match, the perfect first round.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't think he ever played singles again after this match. Obviously, he was on a team last year, but he never played.
I don't think he played much.
He's one of the few players that have played where it's like pretty much one and done. That's it. It's interesting that happened because he wasn't all that bad.
Yeah, and Janine, I love Janine. I've loved her since the first match, and I still love her. I think she's great. I don't think she gets played enough, but she's real hot and cold too. When she's on a losing streak, she kind of gets hit hard. Donica was always interesting to me because. He had some really killer matches, and he disappeared, and I didn't go into why, whether it was medical reasons or he had a death in the family or something like that, but he disappeared, and I wasn't quite sure why. I don't know if, okay, is that the only reason he just moved out of state? And this was before they did the virtuals.
I don't know if he ever made public the reason he moved, but I believe, if I remember correctly, it was he moved to Texas. I don't know if there was a specific reason as to why, and that may be wrong, but I don't know if he ever said a specific reason as to why he moved. It was just he moved, and it would be difficult for him to go back and forth since he was basically leaving the industry. So it was kind of a forced retirement at that point.
Yeah, I always thought he was a great player, and I liked him and his personality, just that, almost kind of the Undertaker, just a machine that comes and destroys. He was more of a machine than Janine was.
Yeah, absolutely. And he put in a solid first match as well. He won in that 5-way with a score of 21. Adam Hlavik a close second at 20. Mike Carlson 15. Keaton Marquis 13. Coy Jandreau, which to correct myself, it was not his debut, but Coy Jandreau kind of bringing up the rear at 7 there. Jacob, out of these matches, what interests you the most?
It's definitely Lon Harris and Cody Hall for me. This was probably my favorite match from just like an entertainment standpoint, because this match was just fun from beginning to end, and like the crowd was so into it behind Cody, and Lon, the professor as a character, is just so great and just so funny and entertaining and funny for like, I don't even know if he intended it to be funny, but it just was to me. So definitely that one was a big highlight of the season overall. And then like the 5-way, I love Intergeekdom. They're probably my favorite matches to watch nowadays, and getting an introduction to Adam Hlavik and Mark Donica was really cool, and just seeing the type of players they would be in the league for season 5 was cool. And Janine's a fan favorite, I think, has been since that point, and so her debut was really cool. I'll be honest, I forgot Jeff Snyder and Mark Ellis played until you sent us the list. So I haven't had time to go back and revisit that one, but now it's definitely on my radar to revisit.
I watched it today. It's kind of an uneventful, just a blip under the radar. It was, the Lions Den was at the height of so they were like, let's heel against a fan favorite.
Yep, and Schneider did win that match 17-16. I mean, really, the only eventful thing from that match is it is Mark Ellis's last match ever. He would end his career at 5-5. He would never play again. But it wasn't like a big retirement thing. It was just kind of unceremoniously, okay. I mean, I think he kind of plays a role by this point. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, if you told me Jeff was supposed to play somebody else who wasn't able to make it to set, and Ellis was like, yeah, fuck it, that kind of seems like what happened. So before we move on, Andy, what out of these matches interests you the most?
I mean, I guess I got to piggyback with everyone. That Lon Harris, Cody Hall. It was kind of that gimmick underdog wrestling type match aspect of it, and it was actually, I think, a little more entertaining than anyone really expected. I don't think anyone expected it to go to sudden death against Lon Harris, who's become pretty good in teams now. So I think it was just it was a surprise. It was refreshing and it was feel good. There's this guy who's just scrawny little Tobey Maguire around everywhere. He goes, sudden death with Lon Harris. So it was entertaining, and I'm kind of the opposite. I like Inner Geekdom now, but I feel like starting out, it was rough to watch some of those matches. It's really rough in the beginning, and I get it. They were trying to feel their feet out, so those 5-ways are kind of rough, It's really, and then Janine, we all love Janine, and so it was kind of good to see her get her start, and hopefully this year is her year. We'll see. That's another show, another discussion for another time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess just kind of bringing up for myself to bring up the one match. This one wasn't too eventful, but people forget that when they first came in, like Eric and Winston, and we'll get to it if not in this video, definitely in one of the other videos, they went on a run that led them to a title shot almost. It was kind of interesting that they came in and very quickly played well and then just kind of fell off, but it's also noteworthy because we had an introduction of a British man who would later light the internet on fire, and a fake British man who would light the internet on fire with that accent. Which, to give him credit, I had no clue who he was when he played that match, and I heard it, and I went, that's either so fake it's fake, or so real that something sounds wrong. I don't know which, because, I mean, England's got some weird accents, man. If you ever listen to, like, John Boyega talk, he sounds like Mushmouth, but he can do an accent in a film, no problem. It's so weird. But let's go ahead and move on then, and we'll get to two of the big guns in this set of matches. We had the title shots from those residual number one contenders matches. We had Samm Levine and Rachel Cushing take each other on in a singles match that would end in Levine winning 22-21 by TKO. And then we had the Patriots take on the top 10 for the third time in what would be top 10's final match together, and talk about uneventful for them. We have this infamous moment right here that leads to a burnout 28-15 knockout defeat. Certainly not a momentous final match for a team that would have looked for better, but let's get into these. I'll go to Jacob first. Which of these matches, I feel like I know where this is going, but which of these matches?
It's definitely the Patriots' top 10. I don't think the Patriots are a great team, one of the greatest in Schmoedown history. But top 10 they were also pretty good, and I don't think anyone expected, that big of a score gap in the title match. I think most people would have expected the Patriots to win. I know I did, but I didn't expect that. And as far as Samm Levine and Rachel Cushing, I thought Sam was going to retain. Rachel's great. She's become a legend, and rightfully so. But at that point, I think Sam was just on another level himself, and so I was like, "This is, it might go. Sam might have to answer questions in the final round, but I wasn't expecting. I wasn't expecting Sam to be in trouble, which isn't a slight towards Rachel, because she is phenomenal at movie trivia. I just think that's where Sam was at that point, in my opinion.
Yeah, you're certainly right. I mean, it is interesting. I think when you look at the comparison, because unfortunately, by the way of sports, unless especially with something like the Schmoedown, where it's kind of a pick 'em if you play. Very rarely do people get to go out on a high note, and Samm Levine, I think you look at instances like top 10, and that's what makes someone like Samm Levine look at that and go, fuck, I need to walk away while I'm on the good side. But Andy, I'll go to you next. Which of these matches kind of piques your interest the most?
I mean, it's kind of tough to choose. Obviously, that tag title match is amazing, obviously with the blunder as well. That singles match, though, what's kind of crazy about it is, it's apart from Dan Murrell and Oyama and Riley, Levine's the only person to defend that title, and he's actually the only one of two people to defend it more than once. The other one, obviously, being Dan, who's defended it 6 times now. But it's a pick 'em. You can pick either one. They're both really good. Obviously, that Patriots one had a lot of history behind it, so 3 times, all that animosity, and Matt knows doing his best, whatever you want to call it, with that little toothpick or big toothpick.
I think he's impersonating Jeff Snyder.
Jeff Snyder's, yeah.
He gave me definitely a Jeff Snyder, Tom Dagnino vibe with that jacket as well. Just, I don't give 2 shits. I'm here to answer some trivia.
So I was going to say, I'm going to move it on to Alan and let you talk about it, and then I will be back in just a minute. I apologize. But once, Alan, you get out your thoughts about these matches, why don't you guys go ahead and get into that right there. And let's discuss the cursive and why that is or isn't correct.
Was correct.
Go ahead, guys. I'll be back in just 1 second.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the thing about that match, the top 10, because, again, they were my favorite team, and you could tell that was the end. I mean, about the 3rd round, that betting round, they were just done. They had enough. The Jane Fonda thing killed them. I mean, it destroyed that team. It destroyed. And Nost was kind of on his way out at the, onset of that. He was doing really well with the questions. But he just kind of said, okay, this is it. We're done with this. To get stomped the way they did just kind of put the nail in the coffin for the team, which was disappointing on my end because, again, I love those guys. The top 10 shows still show when they put out new episodes. I still will listen. I just like that team altogether. I like the 2 personalities, but yeah, that was they were already losing enough. And Snyder, when Snyder is on and he's answering questions and he is completely dominant in his confidence, it only takes that one slip up, that one wrong question, and he really kicks himself. It's gotten progressively worse as the seasons go on with him. But even in that moment when they were the champions, he would miss a question. He wouldn't let it get to him that bad and still had just that cocky talking crap against him. And the Fonda thing just let them unleash on top 10 and just, I'm going to bury you guys. And they did. And they essentially what's what they did. They buried them.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I love Matt Nost. He was like the best at the unexpected one-liners.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like he just...
Who was that match when he was teamed up with Bibiani? I remember someone gave him that one-liner, and he did the infamous "Good one, kid."
Yeah, good one, kid. Yeah,
it's one of the best one-liners, and it wasn't even needed, but it helped.
Yeah, he's very good at ending the. If there's a debate or a back and forth, he could just end it with one simple little one-liner, and shrugs it off, and boom, his delivery is perfect. On that, yeah, I always loved Matt Nost. I thought it was fun. I liked when they would come into other people's interviews, especially with that rival with Team Action last season, season 4, when they would come into each other's spaces. It was always fun and great, and a lot of just shit talking to the best level. And Matt Nost would always just end it. Boom, here we go, done.
Yeah, it was just so tough. They felt so hard. I mean, they took out Team Action. I mean, they destroyed them.
Yeah.
Had all that momentum, and then they played top that in a really good match, and then they just
it just bottomed out, man. I don't know what really happened. It might be more behind the scenes stuff that we don't know about. And I never try to look, I never really want. I just want to see the show for what it is. I know that's not all these real personalities and that kind of thing. It's a show, and that's why I want to keep it as a show.
Oh, yeah.
That they kind of felt really hard, and the Patriots, the domination was so intense that it was hard to.
Yeah, I mean, they were
8-0 that, I guess.
They were 8-0 going into that match. It was their fifth or sixth defense. So I mean, they were on a whole another level. I don't know if they could hang in today's league, but I think
it's interesting that that I guess they're trying to do right now. Maybe Team Action might pop back up as a team with this little storyline we got going on. And JTE is around, Snyder's around. Who knows? It might be a big bomb dropper surprise thing that they come. I wouldn't mind seeing it, to be honest with you, just to see if they could hang with some of the teams out there now.
Yeah, they got to make some trades then, right? JTE went to where? Where is he with Dagnino still?
I think he's with not Lions Den, Finstock Exchange.
Yeah.
But that whole, I love the factions. Don't get me wrong, the factions are great, but I would like to see a little bit of a swapperoo or something, free agents kind of thing, where they could just kind of let's make our own thing. Now you got what's his name, Chandru trying to boot Winston.
His little thing.
Yeah, his little stuff. And that's one interesting thing about, going back to the previous match with Coy. Coy never interested me as a player, and Winston never really interested me as a player. But as managers, I really, really like them. I really appreciate them a lot. And I think it's kind of their footing. They found their footing. They weren't the strongest players, but as managers, I think they're really, really good, and they really honed in on what they love about it.
Coy can talk. You put him on movie fights, he'll defend that title all day. But when it comes to movie trivia,
that's what I knew. That's where I knew Coy from, was movie fights, and I was a huge fan of his on there. So movie trivia, not as much, but as a manager, I think he's great. Once
he did that Goldblum entrance, I was like, make him a manager all the time. That's
right? Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, he definitely found his footing. He just needs to get a better internet connection. My God.
Yeah.
The man's in a cave with AOL. What the hell's going on?
We should talk to Brendan. It looks like Brendan fixed the internet. Maybe they should talk.
Right?
All right. Well, thank you guys for vamping for me for a minute, killing some time. But
no problem.
Sometimes
no worries, brother.
So if we are good, we can go ahead and move on to the next one.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead. So in between this, like I said, this early part of the season was pretty much a period of title matches, killing time. Title matches, killing time.
Killing time.
So let's go ahead and get into some of those killing time matches, which included some interesting debuts. We had another Inner Geekdom 5-way that saw 4 people who would never really play again, and Jared Hagan, who would go on to become what is the most impressive record you'll ever read? 1-0 with 4 knockouts. The most impressive record you'll ever see. And I should correct, Taylor Robinson is in fact in the Schmoedown this year. She is on a team, but it has yet to play a second match. But the rest of them definitely have not played. Another match from this era, we had the debut of a team that people would go on to love. The Shire Wolves took on the Lions Den in their first match, and the conclusion of a storyline started the previous season. Then we had the debut of one Ethan ERWIN, who took on, let me make sure I get her name right, Yolanda Machado, in what would be a 16-10 TKO win for him. And then finally, I talked about them a minute ago, being contenders later in this season. Well, here's another one on the way. World's Finest took on Trek and beat them in what would be Team Trek's final match ever, in a match that would end 24-28 to World's Finest. So out of some of these matches, and again, if you guys remember any other ones, I'll start with Andy. Which of these matches kind of stands out to you?
Oh man, this is a rough pick here. I always enjoyed Team Trek in a weird sort of way. I don't know why. I don't know what it was about them.
They had good chemistry, I think. They were
they did.
It
was like Mance was that crazy uncle, and then Inman was the guy that like, sit down, calm down. It's okay. It's going to be okay. It was very much like a Dumb and Dumber in a sort of way situation. I don't know how to explain it, but they were entertaining, and they made a pretty
like the Odd Couple.
There you go. The Odd Couple before the Odd Couple. And they did really good somehow, which is strange because, I think Inman had played in singles before and did not do well at all. I mean, we obviously knew he's got that title on his belt. That was where his forte was. And Scott Mance, you never knew what Scott Mance knew. I feel like he knew his movie release dates, but I feel like he was kind of all over the place, and he was a guy who got rattled very easily. So you never knew if he got rattled really easily, you may be in for a rough ride because he would let that get into his head. He would focus on yelling at Roca.
And we talked about it in the last video, but I mean, yeah, Trek were an interesting duo. They they never really played a bad match. I mean, even here, 28-24 is a formidable score in terms of a final score. And they might have been maybe except for MODOK, they were probably the closest team to beating the Patriots. If it weren't for their match was the one that had the buzzer issue within it. But if it weren't for that, they were probably the closest to beating the Patriots, which would have been an interesting change in history if that had happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, certainly an interesting match, and it's one of those matches, and we'll see that as well with some other teams later on in later different seasons. It's kind of a changing of the guard move where like a new team plays an old team, and more times than not, the new team kind of wins out. Yeah, so Alan, I'll move on to you. Which of these kind of stands out to you or interests you?
Well, the Shire Wolves debut, we'd been following Clark, and especially me, because I'm a sucker for redheads. I've always loved me some Clark Wolf, I ain't gonna lie. And I always loved her commentary stuff on horror films. That I used to watch the show that she had about horror films with Riley. And I liked Wolves of Steel. I really liked that. That was my second favorite team after Top 10. Is because I like Mark Riley. I like Clark. I thought they played well together. Rachel, I was kind of okay. She's all right, but I wanted to see what happened. And I mean, honestly, this wasn't really a true test of their abilities because Dagnino doesn't know a damn thing, and Knapsack, if it's not Star Wars, he don't know much either.
and I do say, not that you like doing this very often, but I do have to give Dagnino and Ken credit. The score did end 25-22, so they started
22, yeah.
Yeah, this is one of maybe two times I can think of that Dagnino actually played a hell of a match. The other one being Orlando. It doesn't happen very often. Most of the time you're getting Chadwick Boseman, but every once in a while he's got a good one in him, and this was one of them. I'll move on to Jacob. Which of these kind of stands out to you?
I remember Ethan's debut. Remember watching him and thinking, maybe we have a future champion here. And spoilers, we did.
Lo and behold, yeah.
So just the knowledge he showed, I thought, he's not the most exciting player to watch, but he knows his stuff, and sometimes that's fun to watch. And for me personally, that was fun to watch. The five-way, I couldn't tell you anything about the five-way.
Well, I can give you this. It's probably overall the least impressive five-way that ever got played. So the five players were Alana Jordan, Dorian Parks, Jared Habon, Taylor Robinson, and Jamie Costa. And the respective scores were Parks got 9, Jordan got 5, Jared Habon obviously won with 17, Taylor Robinson got 11, and Jamie Costa got 6. So most of the players were in the bottom below 10, which is not a good look. I believe.
And that's when they were still doing the score reset each round too, huh? Right?
No, they weren't. By this point, they had switched.
They weren't? Okay.
Oh yeah,
but two. I believe 2 of them were TKOs, and 2 of them were straight up knockouts. Like they were gone before the 3rd round. It was really all it did was showcase that Jared may be good at this. Then unfortunately, he kind of flamed out, and we'll get to one of those in a minute. Where he never really lived up to it. To me, it's that the Ethan ERWIN match I think is the interesting one because now unfortunately I don't have the specific breakdown in front of me, but 16-10, if the most you can get without steals is 17, he got 16. That's not a bad showing, especially if you're only playing in 2 rounds. Now I assume because she also played a round 2, there was probably steals. Again, I don't have the specifics of how it went in front of me. But that's a pretty solid score to win by in your first match, and that is a powerhouse. Like, okay, I'm here, I'm good enough. It's certainly statement making. I would say, especially at that time when, the belt very much, as I called it jokingly, the belt still was very much in the circle jerk of, Dan, Riley, Roca. I mean, obviously by this point Christian and Sam had won it, but it hadn't stretched that far out. We hadn't had anybody really new make a challenge for it. So that would be the interesting one this year. So before we get into kind of the next round of title matches, there was one major thing that happened in between kind of We're Killing Time matches and the title matches that is worth mentioning, which is the first live event happened. Now, obviously, this is a thing that by season 6 was encompassing the Schmoedown. Every single month they were on the road. And for that reason, I'm not going to mention every single live show over the course of the show. If the match happened to be important, it'll get brought up, but it's not a reflector. Not every match that was played on the road was big, but I feel like the first one is worth mentioning. And we got 2 entertaining matches in it at the very least. We had the Wildberries take on the Real Rejects in a match that, again, pretty damn solid. One of the best performances from both of these teams. The Wildberries would win 25-22. And then we saw JTE take on John Roca, and this match would end 17-10 TKO to John Roca. So I'll go ahead and go to Jacob first. Which of these matches kind of stands out to you?
It's definitely the Wildberries and the Real Rejects. I mean, you have 2 of the most entertaining teams, and they're going head to head. It's going to be a wild ride. I'll be honest, this isn't a match. These aren't 2 matches I've seen for a while. It's not. They weren't a couple I could revisit before coming on, but I do remember the Wildberries and Real Rejects just being super entertaining because of who's involved. So definitely that one for me personally.
Yeah, absolutely. Andy, on to you. Which of these kind of what you remember stands out to you?
I got to go with actually the same. The Real Rejects is actually kind of how I found the Schmoedown. I remember I was watching like a trailer reaction of theirs, and then it led me to a movie fights that they were on, which led me to the very first free for all, actually, which was the very first Schmoedown thing I ever watched.
Which makes sense. John Humphreys, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's good on the YouTube algorithm.
Yeah, exactly. They knew what they were doing. They were just doing it really slowly. It was a slow burn, but it's actually one of those days where Makuga was on. That Makuga magic happened, so it actually, and like I said, it ended up being a really damn entertaining match, really close, and it was a good first match, I think, for the live setting to show everyone else like this is what we've got. Come on and join us. It was entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that score is damn impressive, and I think it's funny if that was the only Wildberries match you'd ever watched, it'd give you the impression that they were title contenders because, as I just said a few minutes ago, 25-22 was the score for the Shire Wolves Lions Den match. So they equaled the Shire Wolves score from their match. It's certainly an interesting anomaly for both of them, honestly, because the Real Rejects they've never played awful, but they were never the team that took it over the top, and it's interesting that one of their best performances ended in a loss because of how good the Wildberries were. Before we move on, Alan, to you, did either of these stand out to you?
Well, definitely the Roca JTE, because this was Roca's redemption. Finally got to take out the Patriots, got to take out, the team that they kind of put away top 10. So that was a really nice thing to see. And it was really cool to see that the Schmoedown surviving different formats. Will this work in a live event? Hell yeah, it worked in a live event really, really well.
It worked pretty smoothly, all things considered, for a first time
exactly.
out.
For first time out, with the crowd there, and there's always the danger of the crowd, somebody throwing off the answers or that kind of thing. But yeah, it worked well. The crowd was really excited. It added that the theater feel of everybody hanging on. Oh, is he going to get this right? Is he going to get this wrong? It made the entrances that much more exciting. Yeah, it worked in the format really, really well. And I haven't missed a live event yet. Being a patron, that I've made sure I want to see every single one.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, let's go ahead and get into kind of really starting to wrap up, but we still got a little bit of matches to go. So we had, before getting into kind of the mid-season point, the collision, we had another big round of title matches that happened. And we'll start with the number one contenders matches for them first. Up first, we had the team that were bounding back of their only loss, coming for that title again, we had Above the Line take on MODOK in a match that would end 23-17 by TKO. Then we had the IG number one contenders match, Mark Donica versus Jared Habon, again, when the league could make a number one contenders match out of two 1-0 players. And that would end 14-12 in Donica's favor. And then, once again, I mentioned him early on, a better performance this time, but we had Clark Wolfe versus Mike Kalinowski, which ends 21-20 in sudden death. And that was their number one contenders match. So I'll go ahead and hand it to it. Andy, which of these matches kind of stands out to you?
Above the Line all day. Above the Line all day. I love Drew. I love Godfather. I am very happy that he is back this year on his revenge tour. But I mean, Samm Levine was already playing on a whole nother level. So I think he kind of helped Drew McWeeny really lock in and hone his skill. And they were a buzzsaw. They wanted those titles. They lost barely in that last match against the Patriots. So they were on a mission. And I think it really helped. It was kind of that first match really taking the storyline element and the trivia knowledge of it, and just they took the ball and ran with it and kind of really sucked you in, and you got invested one way or another, whichever side you were on in that match. So I think for me, it was that Above the Line match.
Yeah, good point. Alan, I'll go ahead and go to you. Which of these kind of stands out to you?
The Donica, just seeing Donica being dominant. I mean, I think he could have, later on gone against better players. Because Habon, I mean, really, I didn't even know who the guy was until somebody had mentioned something about The Bachelor, and I went, "Oh, I think my wife watches that show." But that was the only thing. I didn't know anything. I wasn't really that impressed with him, but just seeing Donica, the whole character thing, and I believe this was around the time, it might have been before this, that Ken Knapsack kept dropping the Knights of Ken, and Donica was going to be one of his knights, or something like that was going to happen. So I was always interested. Yeah, I wanted that to happen. I was all excited about that. Oh yeah, I'd like to see Ken branch off, grab his own thing, create this thing. But it never really ended up happening. But would have been interesting to me to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Jacob, I go to you. Which of these matches stands out to you?
It's definitely the teams match. Above the Line, I think, is one of the greatest teams to play. But, hats off to MODOK. They're entertaining, especially Gray Drake. She is just entertaining. And, that's one of the things about the Schmoedown I appreciate, is that it's just not movie trivia, but they're entertaining us. And, MODOK really brought that. So that's something about them I could appreciate. And then just the match itself, like Above the Line, at that point, I was like, they're winning the titles. It's their time. Samm Levine, like we've said before, on another level, and really elevating Drew McWeeny to champion status. So that's definitely the match that sticks out to me here.
Yeah, absolutely. And just because it's the one that got mentioned the least, it is worth the mention. Again, it is funny, kind of. It's one of those instances where they didn't have to formulate something. They just had a funny natural circumstance happen where Kalinowski, whether good or bad, just kept losing. And I think it worked perfectly that it built up to a storyline you could really do with him. But again, this is one of his better played matches on that losing streak. He rebounded from that awful 4-point performance really well, and came in and really brought it to Clark Wolfe, which is funny. I think that's the only time I've ever seen somebody lose a match that badly that was a number one contenders match and then immediately work themselves into another number one contenders match. I think that's incredible, and that tells you how thin it was at the time. They were looking for people to step up out of the rookies who were coming in, and obviously we got one later in the year, but at that point it was like, oh, I guess Kalinowski got a record, let's give it to him.
And it paid off gloriously for him in the end, because corruption went for a while now.
But that kind of like with Rachel Cushing, that singles belt was the only thing he could never get a lick at, and it doesn't work out again here. But we move on from those, and we move on to the title matches that followed these number one contenders matches. And with that, we have Jason Inman taking on Mark Donica for the IG title, and Inman defends this one 19-16 by TKO, handing Donica his first defeat. Then we had the Patriots going for the ever glorious 10-win streak, taking on Above the Line, and it was not meant to be, as Above the Line would beat the 9-0 Patriots 35-31, winning the team's belts and making, I believe, Sam the first ever double belted champion.
Yep.
And that title could not have lasted very long, as he immediately had to take on Clark Wolfe in a singles title match that he would win 19-18 in sudden death. So I'll go ahead and go to Alan first. Which of these three matches stands out most to you?
Well, the Patriots losing, of course. I mean, but Above the Line was kind of undeniable. They just were, Sam was dominating no matter what, and Drew McWeeny always, for a while, I thought Drew McWeeny would never lose. I just thought he's gonna be dominating the whole time. So them together, it was kind of the last match of the spectacular, where the Patriots barely hung on just by one question mess up.
They could not remember the Titans.
Yeah, that was it, exactly. So I think it was just inevitable that they did that. But Sam and with Clark showing her why she's been a steadfast part of this for so long. She almost had it. So both great matches.
And it was a much improved match from her first title shot against Dan Murrell. She did not play very good in that one at all. So it's improvement over time, I think, is what's interesting, is what it shows. Jacob, I go to you. Which of these kind of stands out to you?
I'm kind of on the same line, I think, in Alan is. The teams match was so good. And the Drew McWeeney's celebration when you hear "and your winner," and his name is called.
I wish I'd caught that. The face is entertaining.
That was like the first time I remember thinking, like, this is a guy who deserves it. And so I just remember being really happy. And as far as the singles title, I'm an underdog guy. Like, I love to root for the underdog, and Clark was definitely an underdog. And when it went to sudden death, I was like, oh, maybe this could happen. And then there was the rug just being taken out from under you, like, it's not happening. But you could be unhappy because Samm Levine is still, he's a great champion. He's a great player. He's a good manager now. But his run as champion was probably one of my favorites. So seeing him continue it was pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And as somebody said before, Sam, the only person besides Dan to defend it more than once, which is weird, because it feels like the singles title has been defended more times than you would think, but it's just because Dan's had it 4 times and defended it each time. But when you boil it down, it really is just Riley in the early days, and then Oyama did it once, and then Levine did it twice, and that was really it.
And that Oyama match, he shouldn't have even won that. I mean, he gave up. He gave up.
He gave up.
On a platter.
Snyder gave up. Yeah.
Exactly.
Like, that's Jeff Snyder and his choke. That's a whole other.
Yep.
Jeff Snyder, the ultimate, unfortunately, choke artist. He's, I guess technically he did have a choke in this session. He was going for 10-0. They couldn't quite do it on that note. What stands out to you about these matches?
I piggyback with everyone else. That tag title match, it was just, they'd done such a good job of making you hate the Patriots that you almost wanted to see them lose, and it was that feel-good story. And like I said, they were working hard, and Drew McWeeny, you felt so happy for the guy. And I think I could be wrong, but they lost on a Robert Duvall question, which is how they won those, I believe, which is a very weird little come full circle, which was kind of cool.
It really does, yeah. And then I think obviously as well, with the Inner Geekdom match, just to bring it up briefly, it is interesting, especially in the early days, because before we had this like circular motion of Mara, Mike, and Rachel, it really was a hodgepodge of just people kind of shooting at it. And I think in terms of anticipation, between a mix of the performance and the character, you'd think Donica had been around longer than a 2-0 record by the way that people really thought he could do this. And so I think it further establishes how good Inman is that he TKO'd him. And again, 2-0 when you look back on it, it's not a crazy record to have, and even comparable to Jason's 3-1. But it's like when you look at it, that's a dominant performance against a guy that people were really backing, and I think that only solidifies. It's one of those things that makes you wonder if Jason came back, could he still hang? Because he did have those dominant performances that we're seeing now. It's just obviously in a different perspective because there's been a shift in how the game's literally managed and played. So it is an interesting discussion that people could have and think about. Does anybody have any thoughts on that before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, I think after that match, that's really when IG turned. It became a whole other league after Donica, because then that's when they brought in the tournament, which I thought was great, and that really opened up IG to become obviously what it is now, which for a lot of people it's their favorite division.
Yeah, you're right.
So I think it was good. I think it was good in a way to have a match that dominant. Like, okay, we can make this a good league. Let's open it up to more people. Let's put our feelers out there. Let's get more people in here. Let's not make every match a 5-way, because that was getting kind of boring.
It was. If it's not a title match, it's a 5-way.
Yeah.
And so, kind of speaking of the movement and speaking of the man who was, in terms of storyline, responsible for all of that, we have one more match on the docket, which is Team Action taking on DC Movie News, and what was legitimately a great performance from both teams. The match ends 29-26. With Team Action taking the win in classic Team Action style. And even more so than that, it's, between the losses and the Andrew guy in your ear, which I'm sure plays a part into it when that man's on his roll, we get the dawn of corruption. Mike Kalinowski tells his teammates, the Schmoedown and the world, to fuck off, disappears, and next time you see him, he's in a total different stance and state of mind, and thus begins not only the first real complete overhaul in terms of how the story is affecting the Schmoedown, but really what was one of the best runs we have seen somebody go on, because it was weird how just the total change of frame for him took him from somebody who played well but could never quite get there to, no, this guy, you gotta wait till he loses at some point. Andy, I'll start with you. You got the shirt on. What do you think of this match?
He's kind of the first competitor, even before his turn, he was the first competitor that I kind of really stuck to. I don't know why, something about him just connected with me. So I loved this whole turn. Like I said, I think it changed the league for the better. Obviously, it's made it a whole nother element. And like I said, I think it was a perfect storm. Obviously the losing helped the storyline. You can't plan that, but it set everything in motion to kind of change it. And that's really all I got to say about it. I mean, it was a really good match. I don't think Team Action was around too much longer after that. I don't know. Did they even play a match after that? I'm not sure.
They did. They played one more.
They played one more,
actually. One or two more.
But yes, I think it was the perfect turn. It was the right time to change up the league. And obviously, I think the other thing I really realized is Mike changed it went from Mike became a player of he knew what he knew to I'm going to study. And obviously we know he has a very exhaustive studying method. And he was the first guy you would hear about behind the scenes of, oh, he has his book, and he had a book. And that's when you realize, like, okay, this is more than just a movie trivia. This is, you got to put your blood, sweat, and tears into it. And he was the first guy to really, I think, go on a tear in 2 different divisions.
Yeah,
almost 3 at one point. So
yeah, you're right. Well, he took because Samm Levine was really the first, obviously, with that teams and singles run, but that's something you can knack into one go. Mike took that and took it a step further by then really going into the IG division and going, no, I'm not just gonna dominate over here, but I'm gonna go into a league that has a bunch of nobodies fighting each other. I'm gonna dominate you here too and really make a go for it. And it basically all but worked very few times. I mean, even today, like, he ran a tournament last year. That's impressive in and of itself, considering now he's considered old guard because there's so many new players that are coming in with this mentality. So, Alan, I go to you. What are your thoughts on this match?
You got to echo. I mean, it shifted the whole game, really. because it just, and what I liked about it, like, as far as character study wise, we saw Mike go from kind of three different characters. He was the killer, and then he went into the KO, or a little bit of the just the nice guy, the DC guy, and then into this. Okay, now he's going to be KO. Now he's going to be the killer again, but a whole new killer where he's actually lethal, because he did go into the studying and it's really dominating the three different leagues. So I think it was great because it changed up a whole lot. And it made it interesting in a season that had kind of been, all right, we're coasting a little bit on some of these things, but this kind of made it, this is a radical change and something's going to go down and we're not quite sure what's going to happen, which made the storyline as interesting as the matches themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
And whereas it really brought that wrestling and movie trivia to life, and that the great thing and the thing that I always loved about the Schmoedown is that the storyline doesn't affect the actual truth of the matches. The matches are, not pulled, not scripted. They're, what they are, which I always appreciate that. So this kind of added, that really shows that and brings that to light, which was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it really is, which is interesting because of how it runs. It's, the story doesn't affect the matches, but the matches certainly affect the story. And obviously this isn't something we'll get into right now, but the run of Corruption is only fueled by the performances of Mike and Chance. Like, they were what took that to the next level of, no, this isn't just you telling us these people are going to take over. They are actually taking over. And it certainly helps. Jacob, before we wrap up, I'll go ahead and you, man. What were your thoughts on this match and kind of where it ended up?
Yeah, Team Action was always that team that you love to hate.
Oh, yeah.
Like they were such good heels. And I think they were the perfect team to beat DC at the time because, Andrew Guy could just get in your ear, and Ben Bateman was so smug and cocky. And it was like they were like the perfect team to go against to kind of cause this character shift in Kalinowski. And I just thought it was done perfectly. And I know the matches, like we said, aren't scripted. So I just think, everything was done, to perfection. And it started a time for me where I actually started paying attention to the characters. Because before it was just like, all right, let's just watch some movie trivia. And the character side of it wasn't something that I was drawn to, even though like I'm a huge wrestling fan. It was always more about the trivia for me and just watching really good trivia matches. And then this is when the characters started really standing out to me, and Kalinowski was the big jump off for that. So this moment holds a special place for me. And Corruption, I don't know where the league would be if Corruption hadn't happened.
True, because it not only, it really is, and we have a little bit of extra time, so we can talk about it briefly because it's where we'll be going next in the next episode. But it really did shape the league because not only did they use it to me, it's the most creative use of storytelling that they've ever had because they used it to shape the IG League into something other than here's 5 people who are kind of geeky playing a match and the best one gets kept and the other 5 we'll never see again, or the other 4. And they took the teams division, which at that point had been playing for over a year. It was kind of rattling its course. Top 10 had broken up, as we'll get into early in the next one. MODOK broke up. Team Action really stopped playing together because Drew became unavailable. DC Movie News was broken up now. So all the teams that were getting the matches, the Nerds Watch, they were all broken up. And so they used that as a way to just completely reinvigorate their teams division in such a way that, look, at the end of the day, if you want to go back to who you were with, that's fine. But we also have a shot at giving you somebody new that could work. And I think it was a great idea. So they used it in ways that were so creative. And it also gave them a cover, right? And Christian's talked about it publicly in the years since. about half the teams for corruption were legitimately random. We put your names in a hat and pulled them. The other half were paired up.
Yeah.
They used it to slyly put teams together under the impression of like, oh, this is completely random. And really the only one that stood out was Roka Dan. Like, really? You happen to pull those two out of a hat next to each other? What are the fucking odds?
How convenient.
You know, like,
Right?
and I don't know for sure if he's ever said this one, but to me, for what I kind of know about it, I'm very certain that like corruption as a team was planned, but it's a brilliant way to integrate someone you've never heard of. Oh, he got pucked out of a hat next to the guy who's running the show. Like, that's an interesting way to try and integrate somebody and put them over very quickly because you're going to see a lot of them by nature. And I thought they did, as somebody who isn't a wrestling fan, and especially in the earlier seasons, thought some of the storytelling aspects were very jagged and a little off at sometimes. This was the most natural thing I think they've ever done in terms of we need to use a story to reshape the league. This is how we do it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So before we finish up, I'll give you guys one more chance to kind of talk about the matches or to kind of give your brief thoughts, because unfortunately I don't believe either of you guys will be on the next episode. Kind of give your thoughts on where this all goes if anybody wants to kind of wrap up before we head out.
I think we talked about like the beginning of the season is really just it's a slog. It's kind of a mismatch of here's a good match, here's a bunch of really weird matches. They had that really weird Ash versus Evil Dead match.
Yeah.
Yep, that was
that
was another one. Yep.
I watched that cutscene today setting it up, and it was just very awkward. It was that situation between Big John Snap and Whitney Seibold just kind of talking,
Right.
and then Bruce Campbell kind of randomly walks in and was like, hey, let's play a movie trivia match with a bunch of people that don't know movie trivia. But, you know, I feel like this last match was really kind of the turning point of they were like, all right, we're not messing around anymore. Let's hit the pedal to the metal. We've done the live shows. Those work well. Let's just go into the next phase of the Movie Trivia Schmoedown, which is where they went after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, for once on time, but I think that is the show, guys. Thank you to all three of you for joining me. I'm going to go around the horn and start with Jacob. Where can people find you, man? Plug your stuff.
You can find me over at Nerd Entertainment Network. I host a show every Sunday. It's called Real Talk with the Real Deal. That's kind of a play on words. I'm also in combat wrestling trivia, where I'm in a group called The Real Deal. JB3 kind of nicknamed me the Real one match, and so it kind of stuck. So yeah, you can find me both of those places. We're doing the Clash of the Combatants right now. It's a 9-week round robin G1 style tournament. We're crowning a new champion this Friday. Well, from whenever this airs.
We'll go 2 weeks from now.
So a new champion will have been crowned by then.
It's okay. We make no secret these are pre-recorded, so you're good.
So yeah, we're just having a lot of fun over there. So yeah, Nerd Entertainment, Combat Wrestling Trivia. That's where you can find me.
Absolutely. And Alan, where can people find you?
You can find me all around the TMG. I'm drifting out somewhere along the lines, but definitely check out Cancel This Show with me and my man Matt Beer. We're talking about the topics, the political. We're trying to keep it political because the politics is all out of all of the trivia stuff. So we're going to throw it into one show and talk about all the political aspects of the week previous. And we've had a lot of fun thus far. It's kind of like a big therapy session for me at the end of the day, and I love it. So check out the Cancel This Show on Tuesdays.
And Andy, I know you're kind of new to getting on some of these shows, man, but where can people find you if they want to bring you on?
You can find me on Facebook, Andy Sweet, looking to kind of dip my toe into whatever. I do open forum with Justin Square. I've done a couple of his things over on Stereo. We just kind of pick a topic. I think next Sunday we're talking about greatest faction before season 7. So we think that'll be kind of interesting. We're going to get into that. We already talked about Is Jeff Snyder the GOAT was an old episode we did. We talked for like 2 hours about why he's not the GOAT in our minds. And, you know, we go off on other tangents over there. Otherwise, yeah, on Facebook and TMG, I'm looking to get into the Teams League. I have a team partner. We're signed up, so we're just waiting for that to start. And that's pretty much where you can find me.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of teams, that commissioner that chumped Jacob, if not already, then very soon we have a geek match going up. So check that out, because yeah. I don't have to say anything else. You guys can find me all over TNG to kind of do the channel plug thing. Obviously, every Monday at 7 p.m. EST, we have SchmoeTalks. Tuesday afternoons, I don't know the exact time yet, although I don't really know if Beer has one. Tuesdays, we have Cancel This Show. On Fridays at 8 p.m. EST, we are currently doing our Falcon and Winter Soldier reviews. This week, the third episode is going up, and you will be joined by some of the TMG regulars to talk about the episode the night after it airs, or the night of its airing, because it airs like 3 a.m. It's really weird how they do that. You guys can check out our mainstay show After Dark every Saturday night at 9 p.m. EST. That's our kind of movie news, joke around, fuck around show. We hang out for 2 hours. We're looking to expand a little bit, bring on some other guests. So periodically, I know I have one up in the groups now that I'm looking at and getting some of the names off of it. So if anybody has any interest in coming on that, please be sure to reach out just to hang out and talk shop for a little bit. And then on Sundays at noon, we have the Supernova show that goes up. All your geekiest desires and pleasures are discussed by one Colton Roberts and the team that he's put together, so be sure to check that out. On top of that, myself and Matt Beer are doing movie reviews and trailer reactions consistently on the channel. Whenever we see something, we do it. Whenever we see something upload, we do it. So be sure to check those out as they go up. For everyone here on the panel, for everyone for TMG, my name is Aaron Knoll. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next week on SchmoeTalks.